Is it worth the risk to keep on going?
Sure, to win. I mean, that's what we've always done. The money's never been a factor. We raced when we didn't have any.
He earned the nickname the Intimidator because he ruled every inch of the track. With 76 victories, millions in winnings, and his story stamped into the very pavement of Daytona, Dale Earnhardt Senior stood above the sport like a steel monument. He symbolized fearless control, raw grit, and the proud heritage of Southern stock car racing. Yet on February 18, 2001, that legend ended in a single shuddering heartbeat. What seemed like a routine bump on the last lap turned into the hit that muted his thunder and rattled NASCAR to its core. Heartbreak followed at once, sparking the question every fan asked: what really happened on that final lap? He had felt this place before, the same scream of engines, the same claustrophobic turns taken at terrifying speed. Daytona was a cathedral, and he knew every inch of its steep banks and long straights. He had ruled it, bled on it, and hoisted trophies above its line of glory. On that February afternoon, he was not out front, but he was performing an equally heroic role. During the closing moments of the 2001 Daytona 500, Earnhardt Senior was blocking the pack like a human shield. His son Dale Earnhardt Jr. and teammate Michael Waltrip battled for victory ahead, while the elder Earnhardt guarded the inside line, sliding and swerving to keep predators away. It was a precise act, a high-speed chess move where one slip could spell doom. Then doom arrived as the swarm charged into turn 4. With a checkered flag only breath away, Sterling Marlin's machine eased into Earnhardt's rear quarter. The contact looked mild, the sort drivers trade all afternoon. Yet at 150 miles an hour, even a feather touch can turn vicious. Earnhardt's car dipped, then shot upward toward the wall. Ken Schrader pulled alongside. The two cars locked, and the black number 3 Chevrolet smashed nose first into the barrier. At first, it did not resemble disaster. The car slid to a halt without fire, without a dramatic spin, without exploding parts. Fans had seen worse wrecks, and Earnhardt had walked away from plenty of them. But this time the silence felt wrong. Schrader scrambled from his own battered ride and hurried to the driver door of the number 3. He froze, recoiled, and his shoulders sagged as he stepped back. Later he would refuse to describe what he saw, not out of secrecy, but because he had stared straight at death. Rescue crews rushed in, lifted Earnhardt from the wreck, and sped him toward Halifax Medical Center. The grandstands fell into a chilling hush. Pit crews stopped, broadcasters whispered, and everyone sensed history pivoting in real time. At 5:16 p.m., doctors declared Dale Earnhardt Senior gone. Taken instantly by the impact, the Iron Man who thrived on intimidation had perished. How could a crash that looked minor steal the most seasoned driver in the field? The autopsy held the answer, and its findings shocked believers everywhere. The Volusia County Medical Examiner confirmed a basilar skull fracture, a brutal break at the base of the skull near the brainstem. Such injuries are among the deadliest, caused by savage deceleration, exactly what occurred when the car hit the wall. The entire wreck lasted seconds, yet the forces were enormous. The report detailed a ring fracture that severed brain function in an instant. In simple terms, Earnhardt died the moment his head snapped forward, then whiplashed back. It was swift, silent, and final. No pain, no awareness, just immediate stillness. Additional injuries included broken ribs, a fractured ankle, chest trauma, and seatbelt abrasions. Rumors flared that the belt had failed, that it was altered, or that it gripped under force. But medical staff and team insiders denied those claims. Tommy Probst, the rescue worker who fought to revive Earnhardt, stated clearly that the belt stayed intact. Regardless, the head trauma alone was lethal. A missing piece of safety gear, the Hans head and neck support, proved pivotal. At the time, NASCAR did not require it, and Earnhardt refused to wear one because he felt restricted. Many drivers agreed, but that mindset changed overnight. NASCAR launched an investigation within hours. Officials pored over video, inspected cars, and interviewed doctors to learn why a crash that looked survivable became fatal. Their conclusions were stark. Cars were too stiff, walls too unforgiving, and protective gear lagged behind modern science. Speed and showmanship had outrun safety. Earnhardt was not the first driver to suffer this cruel fracture, yet his star power forced decision-makers to face the pattern. In the months before Daytona, the sport had already lost rising talents Adam Petty and Kenny Irwin Jr. to the same silent killer. Some insiders whispered that stock car racing had been living on borrowed time, flirting with fate every Sunday while crowds roared. Outside the medical center that night, supporters formed a candlelit ring, singing softly as the news rippled through handheld radios. The next morning, thousands mailed letters and flowers, and the tall fence around Turn 4 became a wall of handwritten prayers. During the following weekend at Rockingham, drivers placed black number 3 stickers on their helmets, and when engines fired, the air trembled with respect. Engineers swarmed the research center, smashing test cars into concrete blocks to learn how to blunt deadly G-forces. By the time the season ended, NASCAR had written 50 pages of fresh safety code, every line a solemn vow carved from loss. Within a year, the Hans device became mandatory. Car interiors were redesigned to absorb energy. Walls gained safer barriers made of steel and foam that swallow kinetic force. Cockpits strengthened, helmets advanced, and seats grew side supports that hugged the driver's head and shoulders. The passing of Dale Earnhardt did more than close a chapter. It ignited a revolution that keeps saving lives every season. Tributes flowed worldwide. The public funeral at the First Baptist Church in Charlotte overflowed with mourners, from factory workers to Hollywood stars, all crowding together under gray skies. Inside the packed sanctuary, Jeff Gordon delivered a shaky tribute, admitting that the fiercest rival he ever faced had also become the mentor who showed him how to conquer fear. Outside, souvenir trailers sold out number 3 hats before noon, proof that even in sorrow the Earnhardt legend drew people like gravity. Teresa Earnhardt, dressed in deep black, stood beside the casket with unflinching resolve, later vowing that the family company would honor Dale's vision and never compromise on safety. Fans cried at Daytona, racers wore black armbands, and the number 3 transformed into a shrine of respect. The man who once declared he would rather die in a race car than fade away quietly had kept his word, and in doing so, he created a blueprint that has likely spared countless competitors since. For those who stood there that day, especially as Dale Earnhardt Jr., the loss cut far deeper than history books can show. Jr. turned sorrow into drive, steering the Earnhardt name into a new era, capturing wins, earning most popular driver honors, and pushing relentlessly for safer racing. Years later, when a driver staggers from a twisted wreck and waves to roaring crowds, cameras zoom on a small black 3 stitched on many uniforms. A silent salute that reminds everyone why modern machines can crumple, yet the people inside still breathe. There is something eerie about the way Dale Earnhardt left this world. It was not a fiery spectacle, but a quiet snap of physics and fate that even the sharpest eye could miss. No smoke, no flame, just a titan who had beaten every threat the sport could launch, undone by one razor-thin moment. If a powerhouse like Dale Earnhardt can fall, nobody is safe in the driver's seat. The instant doctors confirmed his passing, a shockwave tore through NASCAR culture. Fans did not just mourn, they demanded answers, and the sport could feel the reckoning roaring toward it like a freight train. For years, the show had danced on a thin edge between thrill and doom, treating spins and pileups as part of the ticket price. But losing the Intimidator was different. It was a blaring alarm that could not be ignored. Within hours, top officials opened a massive probe, replaying every frame and tearing apart the batter number 3 in a quest for truth. Medical charts, telemetry logs, and even belt scraps landed on inspection tables under harsh lights. If a modest-looking wreck could kill the toughest man on the grid, something deep inside the machine was broken, and that flaw had to be hunted down now. The findings jolted everyone. Cars built for blistering speed had grown stiff as iron coffins, slicing through air yet feeding brutal force straight to the driver at impact. Tracks ringed with concrete bounce that force right back, and Turn 4 Daytona funneled lethal energy straight into Earnhardt's cockpit with nowhere to bleed away. NASCAR hit the gas on change. A fresh research and development hub sprang up with one mission: protect the people behind the wheel. Biomechanical experts, trauma surgeons, and crash scientists joined forces, vowing that injuries were no longer part of the game. First came a revolution in restraint gear. Within months, the Hans head and neck support went from optional to mandatory, locking helmet to shoulder pads, so the savage whiplash that shattered Earnhardt's skull could never happen again. Next arrived the safer barrier. Steel and foam layers replaced bare walls, soaking up as much as 70% of impact power, and the new shield spread from Indianapolis to every major oval in record time. Then the machines themselves morphed. The car of tomorrow debuted in 2007 with a broader body, fortified roof, energy-soaking panels, and the pilot scooted farther from the door for side-hit defense. Roof flaps changed, roll cages thickened, and every bolt was reviewed while engineers asked a single burning question: how we keep the next driver from paying the ultimate price. Public reaction rumbled. Purists feared too many rules would slow the spectacle, and a few critics grumbled that money was the real motive. Most fans, though, understood the stakes and welcomed a safer dawn after witnessing the worst loss imaginable. Drivers surrendered their old doubts fast. Many once complained the Hans felt tight. Yet after that grim Sunday, no one wanted their name in the next autopsy. Crew chiefs drilled new safety routines. Pit crews rehearsed extraction runs, and data eclipse gut instinct in the search for perfection. Earnhardt's image lived on every cap and banner. His number 3 turned sacred, and his legacy stamped each helmet upgrade and soft wall install. Something remarkable followed. Not a single racer has died in a top-tier NASCAR event since 2001. We have watched cars cartwheel, split, and burn. Yet the drivers climbed out bruised but breathing, and each time someone whispers his name with raw gratitude. When fans praise modern track safety, they begin not with a rulebook, but with one driver, one number, and one terrible afternoon that jolted the sport awake forever. Now the story moves inside the twisted shell of that Chevrolet, and inside the report that told the brutal truth. Millions saw the crash, but the real tale waited in the medical suite, and in the hush of those who reached the wreck first. The crowd wanted facts, not rumors, and the autopsy supplied them with heartbreaking clarity. Examiners at the Volusia County office spelled it out. Earnhardt died instantly from a basilar skull break, a ring fracture at the base that almost no human survives. The moment his head snapped forward then slammed back, life stopped, and nothing short of a restraining brace could have saved him. The report listed more wounds: broken ribs, a cracked sternum, a smashed left ankle, and deep chest bruises from the 5-point harness. The belt itself sparked fierce debate, with some photos hinting at a rip. NASCAR engineers inspected every stitch and quizzed witnesses, while rescue worker Tommy Probst swore the belt was still secure, even as teammates insisted it tore clean through. Seat position faced new scrutiny too. Was it set too low or reclined for comfort, making disaster more likely? The investigation could not nail down a single fault, yet it hammered home a chilling truth. Tiny choices can mean life or death at 200 miles an hour. Fans also needed to know if he felt pain, and the doctors answered no. Earnhardt passed in an instant, gone before his car stopped sliding, leaving behind a silence so loud it rewrote the future of the entire sport. Dale Earnhardt was likely unconscious the moment his skull shattered. Death came instantly. No pain, no fight, just silence. And maybe that's what made it even worse, because the man who crawled out of fire, flipped upside down at full speed, and walked off broken bones without blinking, was gone in a blink. No flames, no sparks, no warning, just a tiny twist of physics, and the greatest racer of a generation vanished. But if NASCAR thought the autopsy brought closure, they were wrong. It blew the doors wide open. It didn't heal wounds, it exposed them. This wasn't just about Dale anymore. It was about everyone else who might follow him into the wall. The report set off a quiet war behind the scenes. Tradition clashed with survival. The real question wasn't, how did Dale die? It became, how many more will die if we don't change? The fallout was fast. NASCAR, already reeling from the heartbreak, now had to look itself in the mirror. The old rules? Not good enough. The old mindset? Dangerous. Safety could no longer be reactive. It had to be the first priority. Before the engine ever fired up, that meant more than better cars. It meant a whole new mindset. For years, drivers shrugged off new safety gear. The Hans device had been around since the 90s, but many mocked it. Too tight, too stiff, too uncomfortable. Even Dale had rolled his eyes at it. To him, danger was part of the job. Performance came first, safety second. But all that tough talk vanished the moment the medical report dropped. Suddenly, everyone was strapping into a Hans device. Weeks later, it was worn by nearly every driver. Within a year, it was the law, and nobody questioned why. One image burned into the sport's memory. The black number 3, nose first into the wall. And one cold conclusion from the doctors, that the fatal injury could have been prevented with that one device. NASCAR followed with a massive investigation. The Earnhardt Report. Over 300 pages. Crash videos. Belt tests. Angle breakdowns. High-speed replays from every corner of the track. And the most painful fact of all, Dale's crash had been survivable. The force levels were manageable. If the right gear had been in place. That shook everyone. Because if a wreck like that could end a legend, nobody else stood a chance without major changes. Drivers began to picture themselves in that cockpit. Team owners feared their car would be next on the news. So change came, fast and relentless. The car tomorrow was born, safer, stronger, more stable, wider bodies, reinforced cages, crash data black boxes. The driver's seat moved inward for better protection. Even seat angles and belts had new rules. And the safer barriers, those life-saving walls lined with steel and foam, were rolled out across every track in the sport. But as the sport evolved, the rumors kept breathing. Some fans whispered that the report had been changed, that NASCAR covered things up to avoid a lawsuit, that Dale had a pre-existing neck injury. None of those stories were proven, but they showed just how deeply this tragedy cut. People didn't just want facts. They needed something to make sense. Because sometimes saying a belt tore or a helmet wasn't enough just felt too cruel, too simple. Over the years, that report has never left the spotlight. Every anniversary, every bad crash, it always comes back. Doctors still praise NASCAR's honesty in releasing the findings. Safety experts use Dale's crash to train the next generation. And today's drivers, they say they owe their lives to that moment. One detail from the black box was especially chilling. Dale never had time to move. His wheel didn't turn. His foot never hit the brake. The crash was over before his brain knew what was happening. And maybe that's why it haunts so many, because no matter how brave, how experienced, how dominant he was, Dale Earnhardt couldn't outdrive physics. He was human, he was mortal, and that wall didn't care about his history. But the world did, and what followed changed everything. Even after the grief faded, NASCAR faced a new mission, rebuilding trust, not just with drivers, with millions of fans. So transparency became the new standard. After every serious crash, NASCAR started sharing what went wrong and what worked. Not to boost PR, but to educate. And that moment sparked global change. Formula One, IndyCar, endurance races across the world. They all started talking, sharing crash data, comparing safety gear. What took Dale didn't care what logo sound in front of the car. Motorsport realized something powerful. They weren't in separate leagues anymore. They were in it together. One rarely talked about result of that autopsy was this. Drivers finally opened up about fear, about pressure, about the thoughts they pushed down every race day. After Dale's death, drivers began admitting that they were scared. They talked about the weight of family, about the guilt of surviving when others didn't. And for the first time, NASCAR supported it. Counselors were brought in. Grief support was offered. It wasn't just a tough guy sport anymore. It became a sport with a heart. And the fans, they felt it too. To them, Dale wasn't just a racer. He was a racer, a symbol of strength, grit, Southern pride. Losing him felt like losing someone you knew, even if you never met him. But the pain turned into purpose. Petitions for safety gear flew across the internet. Forums buzzed with debates about safer cars. The fan base, once focused on speed and spectacle, was now pushing for safety, too. And the number 3, it became more than just a number. It became a message. Every time a car slams a wall and the driver climbs out, every time a wreck ends with someone walking away, it means Dale's sacrifice worked. And that black and white tribute logo says, "We remember and we fixed it." His autopsy didn't close the story. It started the next chapter, the legacy. Dale Earnhardt's final race wasn't just the end of a career. It was the beginning of a legacy that reshaped the global sport. His 7 championships and 76 wins already made him a legend. But what happened that day in 2001 transformed how NASCAR thinks, protects, and remembers. In the days after the crash, fans poured into Daytona. Some brought roses. Others left notes. Many just stood at turn 4, looking at the wall that stole a hero. It became a place of worship, a sacred curve. People came from everywhere. And while the grief was public, most of the real change started behind locked doors. NASCAR was going through the biggest safety overhaul it had ever seen. And Dale Earnhardt's name was behind every change. His crash became the baseline. His autopsy, a case study. His helmet, his seat, the tilt of his neck at impact. Every detail became data in a mission to make sure no one else suffered the same fate. And his family, they carried that burden with grace. Dale Earnhardt Jr. returned to the track, not just chasing trophies, but protecting a legacy. He became the face of NASCAR's future, not just for his speed, but for how he honored his father's memory. Fans voted him most popular driver 15 years straight. He won races, built a team, and pushed forward, never trying to replace his dad, only to carry his spirit. Then there was Teresa Earnhardt, Dale's widow. She ran Dale Earnhardt Incorporated through triumphs and firestorms. Some praised her for guarding the brand. Others questioned her choices. But no one denied she helped build the legacy Dale left behind. And the number 3? Nobody touched it for over a decade. Not officially retired, but completely untouchable. Everyone knew that number belonged to one man. When it finally came back with Austin Dillon, Richard Childress's grandson, it did so only with Dale Jr.'s blessing. But this legacy, it was bigger than numbers and throwback paint jobs. It was about lives saved. Drivers started surviving crashes that would have been fatal in Earnhardt's time. Ryan Newman's terrifying 2020 Daytona crash proved it. His car flipped, slammed into the wall, burst into flames, and yet he lived. Because of the upgrades, because the car soaked the blow, because the wall gave way, because the seat, the harness, the Hans, all of it had been changed after 2001. Dale's death rewrote the rules of survival. And it didn't stop at NASCAR. IndyCar, Formula One, rally teams, everyone paid attention. Safety tests changed. Cockpits were reimagined. Crumple zones were redesigned. What started with tragedy sparked a worldwide shift. To this day, no NASCAR Cup driver has died in a race since Dale Earnhardt. That's his legacy. It was never about being the fastest. It was about being the one who changed the sport forever. Even in death, Dale was saving lives. And if you think this story ends with safer cars and quiet tributes, think again, because Dale never really left. He's in every roar of an engine, every tire squeal on asphalt, every wreck where a driver walks away safe. His legacy isn't carved in stone. It's carved into every survival story since. And it didn't stop at the tracks or the fans. It went deeper into the way NASCAR teaches its history. Young drivers who never even raced beside Dale still learn from him. They study that final lap, watch the footage, read the reports. His name comes up in training, not just as a racing legend, but as the reason every driver straps on a Hans device, as the reason walls now bend instead of break bones, as the reason survival is the expectation, not a miracle. Documentaries told his story. Books covered his life. Memorial paint jobs appeared in races. Statues went up in Kannapolis, North Carolina, his hometown. And even rival drivers, some of the fiercest competitors, tipped their caps when they passed Turn 4 Daytona. That spot isn't just part of a race anymore. It's a turning point, etched into NASCAR soul. Years later, stars like Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, and Jimmy Johnson all admitted Dale's death changed them. It changed how they thought about risk, about responsibility. They began teaching rookies not just how to race, but how to live through it. Sponsors saw the shift too. Car companies aligned themselves with safety breakthroughs. Tech brands joined the sport, building better helmets, smarter seatbelts, and real-time sensors that monitor a driver's condition mid-race. It felt like the entire racing world shifted because of one man's final moment. And Dale's reach didn't stop there. He entered pop culture, films, country songs, even video games. He became more than a driver. He became an icon, not just of toughness, but of sacrifice. To this day, when NASCAR's biggest races play out, Daytona, Talladega, Darlington, there's always a moment where someone stares at the infield or the banners and thinks of Dale, because he's not just part of history, he's part of the ritual. He's part why it all matters. And that's the real power of the story. It wasn't just about speed. It was about risk, legacy, and learning from the pain. Because for everything Dale Earnhardt gave to NASCAR, the biggest gift of all was its future. His final lap didn't just end a chapter. It saved hundreds of lives. It changed the sport forever.